राम राम सीता राम रामचंद्र पाहि मां। राम राम सीता राम रामचंद्र पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। राम राम सीता राम रामचंद्र पाहि मां। राम राम सीता राम रामचंद्र पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। कृष्ण कृष्ण गोपाला वासुदेव पाहि मां। कृष्ण कृष्ण गोपाला वासुदेव पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। कृष्ण कृष्ण गोपाला वासुदेव पाहि मां। कृष्ण कृष्ण गोपाला वासुदेव पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। राम कृष्ण गोविंद हरे पाहि मां। हर हर गंगाधर नीलकंठ पाहि मां। हर हर गंगाधर नीलकंठ पाहि मां। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Together we'll chant Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verses 1 to 10.
ॐ अथ नवमोऽध्यायः। श्रीभगवानुवाच इदं तु ते गुह्यतमम् प्रवक्ष्याम्यनसूयवे ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितम् यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात्। राजविद्या राजगुह्यम् पवित्रमिदमुत्तमम् प्रत्यक्षावगमम् धर्म्यम् सुसुखम् कर्तुमव्ययम्। अश्रद्दधानाः पुरुषाः धर्मस्यास्य परन्तप अप्राप्य मां निवर्तन्ते मृत्युसंसारवर्त्मनि मया ततमिदं सर्वं जगदव्यक्तमूर्तिना मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थः ममात्मा भूतभावनः यथाकाशस्थितो नित्यम् वायुः सर्वत्र गोमहान् तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानीत्युपधारय सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकाम् कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम् प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नम् अवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात् न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते
Can you all hear clearly? Some people have been telling me that the sound is not clear. So,
Yes, Auntie, you are audible.
yes. Okay, thank you.
Today is the best.
Okay. A lot of, I've heard a few people now tell me that there's been some problem with the sound, but it's okay today, right? Okay, so what is Deepak saying? In verse 5, chapter 9, Bhagavad Gita, the dream state in Veka's mind is compared to world and Brahman. In verse 6, it is mentioned that Brahman is not contaminated by beings. But do we take the memories from dream into waking stage and may even impact or stain our personality? How does one reconcile this comparison then? Deepak, you know the basic rule of a comparison that only one or two things in a comparison are comparable. A very good comparison may have more factors of comparison, but no comparison will be equivalent. Okay, so we are going to study all about this in the chapter on comparisons and how do you know what you know. So this is an important thing for us to understand, that when someone gives a comparison, what is to be equated and what is not to be equated. So in the dream state, it's one of the most beautiful examples present in Vedanta for us to even understand what they're talking about, is the comparison between dream and waking and turiya. So in the dream, just as everything is the waker's mind, so too in this waking world, everything is nothing but Brahman. That's our point of comparison. Another point of comparison in that example is that just as the dreamer can never understand the waker, so too the waker can never understand Turiya. So that's the other point of comparison. Now, just as everything that happens in the dream does not influence the waker, means that if you got a Nobel Prize in the dream, then the waker hasn't got a Nobel Prize. If you lost $1 million in the dream, doesn't mean that the waker has lost $1 million. So that's the point of comparison. Anything else is taking it out of context. Is that okay?
Thank you.
And just incidentally, it's got nothing to do with any of this, but incidentally, there's nothing in the dream that you can do which will stain the waker. Cannot impact your personality, whatever your dream is. But that's incidental to this. Okay, so now where were we? Anybody else now? Okay, so we had started this very interesting thing, which the Lord is doing all his natkhatpana with us, is from verses 4 to verses 10, has to be sort of read together so that you get how he's confusing you and how it's like a riddle. Every bit sounds contradictory, but actually it's all saying the same thing. It just, if you look at it as a riddle, you'll be able to figure this thing out. If you pick out one sentence from that riddle, you misunderstand what he's talking about. So in verse 10, finally, he's going to tell us what he wants to say. So if by the time you reach verse 10, you figured it out, that means you've done well. If you've not yet figured it out and you still have all sorts of things, go back and study this portion again. So what did he say in verse 4? Quick summary. Verse 4 said, all this is pervaded by me in the unmanifest form. Means I am everywhere here, but I am not available to be perceived or felt or thought. Okay, so far so good. All beings dwell in me, I don't dwell in them. Just like the waves dwell in the ocean does not dwell in the waves, right? The waves are in the ocean, right? You don't say the ocean is in the wave. So in that sense, I am all pervading in the unmanifest form. Everything lies in me. I don't lie in it. It's only a matter of, we're talking about God, right? You don't say God is in something. We are in God. Okay. Nacha matstani bhutani, but also nothing exists in me. Look at my divine yoga. Nothing exists in me means this which you believe exists is only Maya. It's not there. All that you believe, which is taking up your mental space, is simply a matter of your mental space. There is nothing else over there. So he's trying to tell us something like, if the rope says, I exist, remember the example of the rope and snake, right? So the rope says, I exist in the snake in the unmanifest form. That means what? When you're seeing the snake, the rope is actually there. It is unmanifest because you're not seeing the rope, you're seeing the snake. Then the snake exists in me, I don't exist in the snake. Then he says, but behold this miraculous thing, neither does the snake exist in me. Because the snake is not there, how will it exist in it, right? The snake is only an illusory projection. So he says, behold this wonderful thing, there is no snake there. Bhuta brunascha bhutastaha mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. Bringing forth and supporting beings, myself does not dwell in them. In other words, the rope is saying that even though you can multiply the illusions that you see on me, I have got nothing to do with them. I do not live in your illusions. Whatever fancy stuff you come up in your brains, I have got nothing to do with that. Obviously, what has the truth got to do with all the nonsense we come up with? So, bringing forth and supporting beings. Now I'll say, how bringing forth and supporting? How did this rope bring about the snake? The rope did not create the snake, right? Then how did the snake come about? It came about because of the rope. In other words, had there been no rope lying there, how would you have thought it was a snake? So that's how we credit the Lord with creation. That if it had not been there, how could then you have misunderstood it? Right? If Mr. Chatterjee is there, if Mr. Banerjee is there, then you can misunderstand him to be Mr. Chatterjee. But if there is no Mr. Banerjee, there's nobody there, then what are you going to misunderstand? So in that sense, the Lord is the creator. We have misunderstood Brahman to be this wonderful creation of ours. So he says, bringing forth and supporting. It's just like the rope saying, I brought forth the snake and I'm supporting the snake. Why is it supporting? Because it's still there. The rope hasn't gone anywhere, it's supporting it. When we have misunderstood Mr. Banerjee as Mr. Chatterjee, Mr. Banerjee is still there, no? He has not gone away. So whatever superimposition you have, the actual thing is still there. The truth cannot go away. The truth is there as it is. Whatever you may think of it, it is there as it is. So he says, though I bring it forth, that means you misunderstand me as that. I support it. That means I'm still there. And yet, I do not dwell in them. Means I've got nothing to do with it. Baba, you people come up with any nonsense of your own. मैं क्या करूं? मुझे ना लेना ना देना उससे. That is what he's saying. So behold my divine yoga. He calls the illusion itself divine. It's called divine because the Lord is there. However much you may misunderstand something, the truth is still there, right? In that sense, it's still divine. So he says, everything exists in me as the wind exists in space. Whatever you have come up with, it's all part of me, just as the wind exists in space. So what's the point of comparison here? That the mighty wind, this entire cosmos, moving all over, the whole thing. You have to understand what that means, cosmos. Each one of us as an individual is to maybe our solar system as a grain of sand is to the earth. The solar system is like a grain of sand to our galaxy. Our galaxy is a grain of sand to the cosmos. I mean, less than a grain of sand. So you understand the magnitude of that thing. What he's saying is this cosmos, the whole of it, all the galaxies put together. They exist in me as wind is in space. Imagine space and imagine wind. What is wind compared to space, right? How much space is there and how much wind is there? And yet it's a mighty wind. It can uproot buildings, it can uproot trees, it can uproot mountains and take them off. It can shake up the ocean and create a tsunami. This mighty wind exists in space. So too, all the disturbance of this world, everything, every part of this cosmos exists in the Lord. Know that all of it rests, exists in me. But no matter how much the stars burn in their fiery infernos, no matter how much heat is created there, no matter how much sorrow is created in a being's heart, none of it touches the self. And that self is what you are. It is an understanding of who I am. It is not an understanding of what God is. We keep thinking of it as God in the sense of some third party. You have to understand it as me. This is telling us, he's introducing us to ourselves and telling us that this is your stature. This is who you are. Not what you're going to be. This is what you are. The entire cosmos exists in you. Take it or leave it. That's the statement. Verse 7. Sarvabhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpadau Visrujamyaham Sarvabhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpadau Visrujamyaham Sarvabhutani Kaunteya. O Kaunteya, O Kunti Putra, you're so beloved to me. Your mother was so beloved to me. In all his love, he's trying to explain to him something that is almost incomprehensible. Sarvabhutani. Bhutani beings, Sarvabhutani. All beings, Prakritim Yanti Mamikam. Prakritim Yanti Mamikam. All beings, Prakriti, you understand, nature, vasanas. Prakriti is the best used as Prakriti only. Go into my Prakriti. Kalpakshaya. Shaya, you understand, destruction. When the Kalpa is destroyed at the end of time, everything retreats back into that divine origin. Punaha, Kalpadau, Visrujamyaham. Punaha, again, when the Kalpa starts again, when time starts again, I will, excuse me, I will bring them forth again. So, O Kaunteya, at the end of a Kalpa, all my beings enter my Prakriti. At the beginning of a Kalpa, I bring them forth again. He's talking about the cycles of life. We already studied them, remember, in chapter 8. So, when the Kalpa starts, Kalpa means a time cycle. So, when the Kalpa starts, then the whole thing starts, the whole manifestation. In modern physics, they talk of it as the Big Bang. Or if you're deeply into it, then string theory. Whatever way you wish to take it, the Big Bang takes place. And the whole thing starts expanding. And that massive cosmos starts growing out of nothing. Don't think that the Big Bang takes place in space. Remember, space is created, time is created in the Big Bang. It's not like when did the Big Bang take place, because until the Big Bang takes place, there is no time. Until it takes place, there is no space. Space itself doesn't exist. So, as this whole thing, the Big Bang as it were, takes place, and the whole cosmos starts opening out, even today, expanding the way it is. Time is created, space is created, beings are created. All of this goes on. And then eventually, for some reason, it collapses back on itself. Kalpakshaye, at the end of time. If there was, at least according to modern physics, they say that all the matter in the universe was, all collected together in extremely high density, all collected into less than a teaspoon of matter. Okay? So it was that. And then the whole thing somehow exploded for reasons best known to itself. And now we have this major cosmos. And it's still expanding, of course. And then one day it'll all collapse back on itself. Time will close, space will close, everything ends. And of course, all beings have ended long before that happens. So he says, Kalpakshaye, they all close down. And then Punaha, again, Kalpadav, Adav, in the beginning of a Kalpa, Again, the whole cycle takes place. Amazing, right? How close it is to modern physics, that they had the same concept 5,000 years ago. Um, Now, of course, that is not my field of study about how historically it matches. So let's not go over there. It doesn't matter whether it matches today's science or it doesn't match today's science. It just doesn't matter, because the point he's making is not that. The point he's making is the cycles that take place. Life is always cycles, and they have conceived huge cycles of the four yugas, 4.32 billion years. That's how they have conceived it. So one kalpa is 1,000 mahayugas. One mahayuga is made of the four yugas. Which are the four yugas? Remember?
Satyuga,
Satya, Treta, Dwapar,
Treta,
and Kali.
Dwapar, and Kali.
Very good. So Satya, Dwapar, Treta, Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali Yuga. Okay. So four yugas. Kali Yuga is the shortest at around 4.32 lakh years. Shortest. Then double that is Dwapar at 8.64 lakhs. Double that. Double that. Add another 4. And then you'll get 1296. 1,000 years we're talking about, okay? This is all in thousands and thousands of years. And that's how you'll come. And of course, Satya Yoga is 17,28,000 years. Now, how did they figure this much out? How did they know that Satya Yoga was so long and Treta Yoga was so long? How did they figure it out? Now, I don't know the mathematics of this, but the common sense of this is obvious. Satya Yoga is what? It's a time where people are pure, they're noble, they're unselfish. Whatever is noble, whatever is pure, whatever is unselfish will last longer, right? And as selfishness takes over, then it starts falling. The duration, the lasting capacity of that starts falling. So Treta Yoga is shorter, Dwapar Yoga is shorter, and Kali Yoga is extremely short, and it will meet with Pralaya. Pralaya means normal pralaya, okay? So what will happen over there? At Kali Yuga, we've all gone selfish, we've all gone wicked, we've all gone ignoble. The whole thing will collapse on us. Isn't that what's happening right now? We have become so selfish as human beings. We don't care whether the trees live, whether the fish live, whether we don't care. It doesn't matter to us. And what is the nature of selfishness is there's no clarity, right? So, you know what these major fishing trawlers do? They go and sweep up the whole ocean. They got mechanized, they're massive trawlers. Go sweep up the whole ocean to the extent that the fish cannot breed again. And then there are no fish. I say, okay, no fish, we'll eat mangoes. No. Do you understand? No fish means what? You swept up the ocean from fish. Who's going to take in your carbon emissions? It's one of the biggest sources of the ocean is one of the biggest sources of dealing with the carbon we create, more than trees. So we clean up the ocean, we chop off the trees, and what are we expecting to do with the carbon we have created? This is the nature of selfishness. Can't see beyond your nose. You say, oh, I made a lot of money. Pagal ho kya? In 2 days you're going to be dead. What was your money going to do for you? So, like, how can you mess up the planet you live on? What are you going to do afterwards? Like, once you messed it up and the whole thing has blown up, what do you think? Where do you think you're going? So some bright spark said, no, we are going to make a colony on Mars. मैं क्या बोलूं? You messed up the planet which was created in a way that was suitable and conducive to you. You messed it up. You think you'll go to Mars and you won't repeat the same thing? So what are you planning to do? Go from planet to planet, messing up every planet up? Learn the lesson. So please don't miss the point. What is the point here? Does anybody know the point over here?
Deterioration of the pure qualities
As
slowly,
selfishness
and then
grows,
destruction.
yeah, as selfishness grows, you find that it can't last. That's why we're all locked up in our homes nowadays. It can't last. How can it last? It'll have to. Unless we wake up and we have a sattvic buddhi, we have the clarity of thought to see what lies ahead. No, I made so much money. Hey भगवान मैं क्या बोलूं? क्या बोलने का कोई फायदा भी है क्या? It sort of becomes pointless if nobody can see that. You go to the northeast in India, it's pristine beauty, one of beautiful places, and you see the beginning of development, the trees being chopped, the roads being made. And what can you say? It's almost like humans don't learn a lesson. Of course, we want development. Every one of us, right? The reason we can now talk to each other is because of development. We have internet, we have electricity, and all that is because of development. So we all want the development, but haven't we figured out a way of getting development without killing ourselves? Why would you want a livelihood and no life? Makes no sense. So this kind of short-sightedness in our behavior brings us to destruction. So that's why Kali Yoga is very, very short, because it's so selfish, it can't last. The same thing happens whether it's a relationship, whether it's some of the biggest business houses in this country, not to name any names, like if you think back, like even like when we were young, like 40 years ago maybe, and you would say, okay, these are the big names in industry. Do you realize that those families are not there anymore? They're hardly there. And if at all they are there, they are in like on small petty thing of themselves. Do you realize that? Why? Because at some time their personal wealth became more important to them than the company itself. They just leached on the company finances until the companies all broke down. I mean, I don't want to name names. It's sad that that happened, and we certainly don't want to look down on anyone. But I'm sure you know what the big business houses did, and how unfortunately they have paid the price for it. So wherever there is selfishness, it won't last. Even in our class over here, if we are all noble, we are all charitable, if we are all sort of pure about it, the class will last. Otherwise, it won't. You know why the class lasts? Because so many people are working behind the scenes for it. So many people. In so many different ways. I mean, it's not just running a class. It's so much. The whole organizational backup on this thing. All doing volunteer work, all doing the best they can in whatever way they can. And that's why the whole thing grows and progresses. And then the moment we start thinking, oh, मुझे क्या मिलना है, मैं कितना कम दे सकता हूँ, it's a very negative attitude. What is the least I can give? Why can't our attitude be, what is the most I can give? When we have that attitude, what is the best I can do? What is the most I can give? And actually execute that, then it'll last. It'll go on, it'll go prick. But if it is all me and mine and how little I can do and nobody's checking, so I can, sort of get away with anything. Imagine if every one of us in this class did what many of us are doing. What a wonderful thing it would be. It will ensure long term. So the purer something is, the longer it lasts. So the point he's trying to make is these cycles of life will go on. But good or bad, things have to come to an end eventually. A good thing will last for longer, a selfish thing will last less. But eventually, even Satya Yoga will come to an end, right? Maybe it will take 17 lakh years, but still it will end one day. And these cycles go on. And what are these cycles? They're only a superimposition on that one truth, on that one Brahman. So every now and then you will misunderstand Brahman to be one of these things. Whether you misunderstand it as selfishness or you misunderstand it as unselfishness, it's still a misunderstanding. We still haven't found the truth. So then you'll say, then why are you stressing on unselfishness? Because by becoming unselfish, we will go closer to the truth. And by becoming more and more unselfish, hopefully we will one day attain that truth. So unselfishness is our method of reaching there. We have no other method of reaching there. So by using that method, there's some hope, there's some likelihood that we will reach there. But if we are selfish, then we are just caught up in the cycle over and over and over again. The same punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Iha samsare bahudustare, krupaya pare pare murari. Oh Murari, please see me through, because this samsar bahudustare, very difficult to cross. Why? Because of the cycles. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Janani is mother, jathare is womb. So again, sleeping in the womb of the mother. In other words, that's what life is, right? You go to birth and death neutrality, birth, death neutrality, which means what? Hope, disappointment, neutrality, hope, disappointment, neutrality. This is what goes on. So either you're hoping in anticipation of something, or you're getting disappointed with something, or you're currently in some kind of neutral zone. Shayanam, asleep. Is that what we want for ourselves? Would we not know the truth? Would we not prefer to know the truth, the reality, rather than do this madness over and over again? So he says these cycles will come and go, come and go. How do they come and go? O Kaunteya, at the end of a kalpa, all beings enter my prakriti. That means it all collapses down on me. Just as on the wave, the tsunami can grow so big, but what happens to it after? It collapses back into the ocean. And at the beginning of a kalpa, I bring them forth again. Right in the beginning of the kalpa means when time starts again, this whole story starts all over again. Now, this is where the problem is. He says, I'm doing this. Okay, so through these verses from 4 to 10, you will constantly see him moving back and forth on whether he is doing it or whether he is not doing it. This verse clearly says, I bring them forth. Clear, there's no debate, right? He said, Visrujami aham. Aham is also there. I is also there. Visrujami. Srujati, you understand, birth. Visrujami aham. I give them birth. I bring them forth. I create them. Very clear. There's no debate on this. Okay, but so you can pick this verse up and claim that God claims to be the creator. Okay, so maybe. Now let's read verse 8 and see what he has to say. Prakritim swamavashtabhya visrujami punah bhutagramamimam krutsnam avasham prakrutirvashat prakritim swamavashtabhya visrujami punah bhutagramamimam krutsnam avasham prakrutirvashat. So last verse he said, okay, the time cycles go on. At the end of the time cycle, everything comes back into me. At the beginning of the time cycle, I create it. That's where we were. Now let us see what he's saying. Prakritim swam ashtabhya. Very, very interesting how he goes back and forth on this issue. Animating my own Prakriti. Having animated my own Prakriti, Visrujami punah punaha. I create it, I bring it forth again and again. Bhuta gramam imam krutsnam. Krutsnam, all of it. Bhuta gramam, grama is the village, right? So the group of beings, that means all beings. Imam this, avasham, helpless. Prakruter vashat, prakrutehe vashat. We are helpless because of Prakriti. I hope you're able to see the change he's making. I created, I animate Prakriti, and they are helpless because of Prakriti. I hope you're able to see how he's resolving this whole concept of his own creation. Deepak has a question. Technically, after periods of unselfishness, does trace of selfishness come about which leads to eventual downfall? Why doesn't unselfishness carry us all the way to the ultimate? I see. This is a societal, when we're talking about these kind of fall, this is about society. Even in our own country, you see, at the time of independence, how dedicated people were to the country. They gave up their life for it. They gave up their jewelry, their wealth. They gave up everything for it. They went to jail. They gave up their reputation. They did all these things for it. Right now, so whatever they were doing at that time, it lasted. In other words, they got us independence, which will last. Now what will happen? Now selfishness is taken over. People are more concerned with whether they win an election than what is good for the country. So it's likely that you're going to lose not likely. I think we already have lost many of the benefits of the hard work of that generation. And firstly, this is at a societal level. Okay, so like let us say there was Mr. Birla, for instance, senior most Mr. Birla, how hard he must have worked to build up an organization, and then he became God Birla. GD Birla used to be called God Birla, and all that sort of thing. And he was the number one person. And then later generations will obviously not be as dedicated to that as he was. So, then they may not continue to be where they are. So, unselfishness will carry an individual, but the individual will not be there, no, all the time. So, therefore, society will fall. Like even take the Ram Rajya. What was Ram Rajya? Imagine what a state the country must have been when Ram was the king. But over a period of time, it goes, right? Where is that Ram Rajya? Where is the basic understanding that the people had at that time? So this is societal. The new generations come up, new thoughts come up, new ideas come up, and selfishness starts taking over. If you take it so commonsensically, look at it like that. How dedicated is a person who begins something versus somebody who has to continue that thing versus a third generation who has never known any struggle versus a fourth generation who takes it as a right to be the top. So if you see it in that commonsensical manner, you'll see how everything has to deteriorate. Is that okay?
Hari Om Janki-ji, I have a question. I'm finding these verses extremely confusing. The simple one, when we say that God doesn't have desires, and here it is saying that I animate, right? If God is beyond us and doesn't have desires, how will this part come? And secondly, also in Vedanta, if I'm not wrong, we made a statement: no creations, therefore no God. So again, even the illusion that it's very is going above me.
Don't worry, Ganesh. You have achieved what he has tried to make you achieve, which is that you're totally confused. So don't worry about it. That is what he's trying to do to you. It's like a riddle. Now you have to learn to put it in position. Now take the example, because then it becomes very clear. Take the example of the rope and the snake. Can the rope not make this statement that I am animating the snake? I have created the snake, I am animating the snake. Because had there been no rope, the question of a snake would never arise. Suppose there was an elephant there, you would not think that that's a snake, right? Because it's a rope there, you can think it's a snake. So this rope has animated it. The rope is supporting it. It's very much there when you're seeing the snake. And the rope has got nothing to do with the snake because the snake is illusory. So that's what he's saying. Helplessly by the force of Prakriti, the beings are coming by the force of Prakriti. I am merely animating it. I got nothing to do with this thing. Okay, so he's dissolving it. We are going to go all the way up to verse 10 in this whole thing about how he moves it from his own thing to the real state. Because we get so used to the words, he's sort of forcing us to think over here. This is an important thing for us to understand these 4 to 10 verses, because it is meant to confuse us. So if you can figure out these 4 to 10, that means you've got a fairly good understanding of the basic philosophy.
Not enough.
So, okay. So, animating my own Prakriti, I bring forth again and again. So, the rope says, I bring forth again and again, meaning I am here. One day you see me as a snake, one day you can see me as maybe a twig, one day you can maybe see me as a crack in the earth. Whatever you make out of it, I am animating it. It is my presence that enables all of this. But it has got nothing to do with me, because beings are coming by the force of Prakriti, not by me. Avasham, helplessly. We are manifesting because of our vasana, because of avidya, helplessly. What can you do if you have a vasana to be a carpenter? What can you do but be a carpenter? If you have a vasana to be a doctor, what can you do but be a doctor? Right? So helplessly. As long as that seed exists, helplessly will that tree come out of it. If it is a mango seed, helplessly will it become a mango tree. If it is a neem seed, helplessly it will become a neem tree. But where is it coming from? From that seed, from the Prakriti, from the vasanas, from the causal body, from the avidya. Nothing to do with the self. What is the self doing? Animating. Animating means what? Because the self is there, you can misunderstand it to be all these things. And whatever your misunderstanding is, that misunderstanding will find perpetuity. So if you think that money is the most important thing in life, then that will find perpetuity. You'll go on thinking like that. If you think money is the source of all evil, then you'll go on thinking like that. And if you're totally confused about whether it is a source of all evil or the most important thing, then you will continue being confused. Because it is neither. Until we know the truth, we will continue with our misunderstanding, our misapprehension, our incorrect comprehension. We have no option. Helplessly. If you don't believe it, go and tell somebody that whatever they're thinking is not correct. helplessly will they have to reject what you say. Haven't you tried it? Have you ever found anyone agreeing with what you said? They can't. Helpless. So as you mature, you understand this. You know, people try to argue with me sometimes. Suppose I say something philosophically, and then they argue and say, no, but can we have that view? No, you can't have that view because the view is this one. You can reject this view, but you cannot have that view. It is so strange. We won't even hear another person if that person is telling us something that is not in accordance to what our beliefs are. We won't hear it. It's incredible. That is why we make it so important in class to be able to repeat what you just heard. Because most of the time you're not hearing. There's a tape recorder playing in our head, and that tape recorder plays continuously. So very, very difficult. Even if somebody knows from the beginning of the class to the end of the class what is the flow of thought that we have maintained, hats off to that person. Literally hats off to that person. It's not easy. Mind has gone here, there, and everywhere. Misunderstandings have flooded the whole understanding. It's very tough because we're helpless. It takes many, many years sometimes before a single misunderstanding is removed. But if you can remove even one misunderstanding, it's like a weight off our shoulders. Never again all that mess. Never again all those problems. The interesting thing is, why don't we remove that misunderstanding? Imagine that here is a gate which is wide open and you won't walk out. It's wide open. Who's keeping you? Who's keeping you in that sorrow? Who's keeping you in that nonsense? Nobody. And yet helplessly we will continue. So that's this word, avasham. Avasham. Helpless. By the force of Prakriti. What is Prakriti? Whatever you have got used to, whatever you have created a vasana for, whatever structure you have formulated of yourself, helplessly will you continue going on that treadmill. Nothing to stop you getting off the treadmill, but you want. If you say, I want to improve, you'll run faster on the treadmill. I won't leave the treadmill. Frightening thought that even when we think about self-development, it continues to be the same old treadmill. So very, very frightening. Aditi, upon enlightenment, will it be the end to birth even if the cosmos comes or closes and opens back again? Aditi, that is very sweet. That is like saying that when I wake up, is it the end of my dream? Yes, it's the end of your dream. No, but then what happened to that housing loan which I had to pay over there? There was no house, there was no housing loan, there was nothing over there. The cosmos will cease to close and open when you have realized the self. There is no cosmos to open and close. Remember, it's all a misunderstanding. So, animating my own Prakriti, I bring forth again and again all this multitude of beings helplessly by the force of Prakriti. So it is the force of Prakriti. It is our own past. It is our own, own traits that we have created for ourselves that make us helplessly do things. So basically what is he saying? He's saying all ignorance is in me. So he has made himself a sort of catalyst in verse 8. So now let's see what he wants to say in verse 9. न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु. So now you see he's reducing it even further. Nacha mam tani karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya. O Dhananjaya, O victor of wealth. Nacha mam, and nor do these acts, tani karmani, all those acts, mam nibadhanti, do not tie me. Mujhe bandhan mein nahi dalte. Udasina vadasinam. I am udasina. I am like one unconcerned. Asaktam, unattached. Karmasu, in those acts. So what did he say? I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Then he says, it doesn't influence me, it doesn't affect me, it doesn't bother me in any way. I am udasinavat and asaktam. I am like one unattached. Now this is very interesting. Udasinavat. Vat means like. So what is udasinavat? Why like one unattached? Unconcerned. So does it mean that he is concerned? This is an interesting construct of Vedanta, which is if you have no concern, this is called tamas. If you are very concerned, this is rajas. To be concernedly unconcerned is sattva. So he is trying to tell us that I have got nothing to do with it while I've got everything to do with it. Meaning what? Meaning that imagine a massive factory, okay, and it's running on electricity. So what is electricity saying? It says, I've got nothing to do with your factory. Because what is the factory do with electricity, right? The factory makes profit or loss or whatever happens. What is it to do with electricity? And yet that factory cannot run without electricity. So we cannot run, we cannot move, we cannot feel, we cannot think without self, right? So in that sense, it is very concerned in our activities, means it's animating our activities, it's very much there in our activities, it has never left us, and yet it has got nothing to do with these activities. So though it is not influenced by it, though it is not stained by it, though it has got nothing in the way to do with it really, nothing will happen without it. So therefore, udasinavat, like one unconcerned. If you are completely unconcerned, you got nothing to do with it, right? You don't make that thing happen. If you're very concerned, you're all involved in it. But he's udasinavat, like meaning it is my enabling power that makes all this happen. But still, I have nothing to do with it. I'm like the petrol in the car. I'm like electricity in the gadgets. I have nothing to do with them. And yet those gadgets won't move had it not been for me. And I'm unattached. I'm unattached means it doesn't matter to petrol whether your car is a criminal's getaway car or whether it's an ambulance, whether it goes safely or whether it meets with an accident. Now, what is petrol to do with all of these things, right? You can't go to the petrol pump and say, you gave me bad petrol. My car met with an accident. You can't say that. Nothing to do with it. So, it's unconcerned and unattached. Now, the important thing for us to understand is not his role, but our role. Our role in our life is like this. Udasinavat and asaktam. like one unconcerned. You play your part like one unconcerned. You're concerned in the sense you are going to play your part to the very best of your ability. You're not going to be unconcerned like you're tamasic and negligent. You do everything you can. You leave no stone unturned. But you understand completely that no matter how this turns out, it makes no difference to me. And if we can live our life like that, you live your life with complete freedom. You live your life like Krishna. Always enjoying, always happy, always comfortable, and always of service. Always doing what needs to be done. But that's the life, right? That's why no amount of trouble that Krishna goes through is trouble for Krishna. For him, it's a simple question. What do I need to do? And do that thing. That's it. The best and the worst. There's only one question. What is it I need to do? Figure that thing out. Do it. Your job is done. That's it. What a free life that would be. Now, why would you live such a free life? Because you realize that you are not this character playing these parts, but you are the self. Understand that. You are something beyond all this. It doesn't matter at the end of the day whether somebody likes you or doesn't like you, whether you made profit or made loss, whether you were declared the most intelligent or the most dumb. How does it matter? Because you could have the best profit, you could be declared the most intelligent, you could be loved by everybody. Will that give you better sleep at night? Will it give you better appetite? What is it going to do for you? But when you become healthy, will you not get corona because of it? Like, what will happen? We don't think of it like that. We think, oh my God, I make a loss. Oh my God, nobody thinks I'm great. So what? What happens? Nothing happens. We do things because they are the right things to do, not because we are going to get something out of those things. And when we live life like that, we live it freely. That's where we should understand. This is the reason he's explaining us the role of the self in our life. Okay, so that's it. And Ganesh has an announcement for us.
Hari Om, everyone. Today at 7 p.m. IST, we will have the small group discussion. I will put my number on the group chat, and if anyone is not part of the group, we have created a WhatsApp group where all the messages go through. Please give me a ping on 9916756142, and we will see each other at 7 p.m. and